Good day. You're listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. This is Chris Miller, your host. I am really excited with today's guest. Today's guest is Ann McMaster, and I met her through Whitten Dunn. Some of you may have remembered Willen's interview. It was great, and I'm going to link to it at the end of this so you can also watch her. She talks about the power of the word. In fact, I think Whitten has been on my show twice, but she talked about the power of the word. And so Ann is going to teach us a little bit more than that. And I love this. I love this process. So she has been leading training sessions, coaching, and working with people all over Europe, New Zealand, Australia, Fiji, Mexico, Colombia, and South Africa, where she even lived for 2 years in South Africa. And you have to tell us about that, Ann. And she is a psychotherapist, a trainer, consultant, and coach. And I did want to mention this to you. She has this book. It's available on her website. And we're going to talk about this book. You can see in my traditional way, I've marked it up with lots of interesting things I want to ask her about. But it's called Lifeshocks, Out of the Blue, Learning from Your Life's Experiences. And I like how she takes this, and there's a process here about how we work through life shocks. But good day, Ann. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you very much. I'm appreciative of this opportunity.
I'm excited to have you on here. I like I was saying before we logged into the session, I have questions. And so I'm excited to have you fill this out and share with our listeners, because I think this ties in a lot with my book. And what it is about teaching people to be conscious and self-aware, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, what is a life shock? Let's start there. What is a life shock?
A life shock is something that you don't plan for, you weren't expecting, and it comes anyway. And they're neither positive nor negative. They're just designed to wake you up to the real reality. Oftentimes, the reality inside our heads does not match the real reality. So life shocks are about course correcting the patterns that we've thought or believed in that never were true and never will be true, to wake us up to those things so that we can get back in sync with the reality of who we are, the reality of who others are, because we often misjudge, if you will, positively or negatively, other people. So we get life shocks about them that wakes us up to who they are.
And so is this a process that helps you get around that or use it?
Well, it releases you to be more in tune with your heart and your gut, because the mind's job is to try to figure it out. The heart doesn't need to figure out anything. It knows who you are. It knows who you're not. It knows what you want. It knows what your values are. And it's tuned into your destiny. Whereas this doesn't have a clue. Its job is try to keep you out of trouble. And when a little kid, they make up stuff, their mom doesn't turn around and speak to them or whatever, they can make up things about that has nothing to do with real reality. But that belief can hang in there for a long time until you address it via this clarity process that's in the book.
So it's sort of like the story we tell ourselves when something happens, right? Oh, this happened because, and oftentimes we're really off target with it.
Yes, exactly.
So the clarity
process. We don't know we're off target. That's the problem.
That's where I get in my book. It's like, just slow down. If we all just slow down and listen.
Yes. And what's the real reality? What are they really saying? I remember one time I got an email, and I assigned all kinds of detrimental things to this email. What I didn't know is the email was actually a sarcastic thing meant to be funny. But I didn't see it that way at the time because I was already in the pits. So I was interpreting everything as negative. It's like once you're down there, it's like, I call it a bad hair day. If I'm having a bad hair day, everything goes wrong because that's the way I see everything.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes I have to go and take a nap because it's like it's a reset, right? It's like, okay, I'm having a bad hair day. I'm going to take a little nap. And hopefully when I wake up, I can start the story again or new.
And to be more in alignment with real reality. I mean, life shocks are really about real reality. So they look like trigger events because they still use things that happen. But life shocks are life's way of waking you up, is how we think of it in this program. So I get life shocks about things that I think about myself that aren't true and never will be. And I get life shocks about how I play safe or small compared to what I could be doing if I believed in myself, but I can't believe in myself because, you know, I had all the stuff in the background running that I don't even know is there.
So
So,
it's all that stuff going on in your mind. And so I didn't go into this very well. So I'm going to give you a chance to explain this to the listeners. You've been using this, what you call it, a methodology
yes.
for how long? I mean, where did you get trained? And
Okay. Well, I did the training in 1984. And I went with 4 other psychotherapists and an Episcopal priest, who is how I found out about the program. He was friends with one of the main trainers. So we all trooped out there. And the idea was that we would go out and have fun in Fisherman's Wharf, you know, just play. We had no plan to get anything because you know how all these different trainings, they promise the moon and they deliver, you know.
yeah,
So I just figured it was another one of those, really. But I was so impacted by it. I saw a woman in like 30 minutes transform from, you know, somebody who couldn't even get her voice to the microphone. I saw her transform right in front of my eyes to being able to speak to all of us with surety and without a microphone. And I thought, okay, I'm a therapist. I do this one-on-one, but I don't know how they did that. And that wasn't taught in graduate school. So I said, while the others went and played and washed Fisherman's Wharf that Monday, I went to one of the co-founders and attended a trainer meeting for people who were interested in becoming trainers. So that's how it started.
and it sounds like you've been doing this for a long time. You're still actively doing this kind of training.
Yes.
Wow.
I didn't train during the pandemic, but I just came back a month ago from UK. I did a training there. And then I'm going again next month to Madrid and then over to London to do trainings.
Wow. So how does that look like when you go to a training session? Let's say you go to Madrid. Is it is it 20 people? Is it a large group of people? Or
it depends. It's normally around 30 people. And since I'm not fluent in Spanish, I know just enough Spanish to get into trouble. If I'm talking with a 5-year-old, maybe I can get along. But so we have simultaneous translation. So I wear a wand, and on channel 6, I get English, and on channel 5, they get Spanish. So it's pretty cool.
is this like a week-long event or 4 days?
Yeah.
Or oh,
It's
wow.
a Friday night, a Saturday, and a Sunday.
Oh, wow. And so you teach them, obviously this is kind of like a mindfulness to a higher degree.
Kind of, but I would say it's more about reality. You know, it's living in the world that is real instead of the one I make up inside my head that was pretty much made up by a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 24-year-old. And so how do I get back to who I am at my core without having to justify anything, prove anything, hide anything, that kind of thing. And the same with other people. So I can be more clear about my boundaries. That's okay with me. That's not okay with me. And still be open to them and for them, if you will, but have consequences if they treat me shabby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other piece is, it's like getting in alignment with gravity. I cannot fly, like, you know, I have no wings. So it's in alignment with life as it is. So it's paying attention to the heat, the cold, the things you hear on the internet, or the things you see in the newscasts, that kind of thing. What's real here?
And so this is part of the clarity process that you talk about in the book. So,
Yes.
so experience happens to you,
Yes.
and then you take it into the clarity stage to define it. Okay, so I'll share with the listeners. And we'll see how it works. I had an experience with my tax return that nice life shock, good one, right? And my employer did something incorrectly with the taxes, and they didn't hold enough out.
Mhm.
So I had this life shock a couple of weeks ago that I owe more money than I expected.
Yeah. So then the question is, how did you know that you owe more money than you expected? Because that's the life shock.
Only when I started filing them, and how you put in your numbers. I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't enough money that they put aside, and so I got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So life shock isn't the title of the event. I owe more taxes. It's actually the thing that happened. How did you know what did you see? What did you hear?
I got on the phone with the IRS or the tax turbo specialist. They looked at it and they said they didn't put enough money aside. And I was like, well, that's what I told them to withhold, married with one child, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, they did something that's not right. So you're going to still owe this money.
So you're going to owe X amount of money.
Right.
That was the life shock. You had a previous life shock that said you didn't hold out enough money. Yeah. So that's one. Then you had another one. This is how much you owe. Extra.
Right.
Yeah. So then the point would be you close your eyes, you go back to that moment, because the whole clarity process is based on your ability to feel your feelings, because feelings are caused by what you think. If you think something's good, you feel differently than if you think it's bad. It's all really about feelings, and that's how you can get to the stuff that's buried from up here.
So the feeling,
yeah,
obviously was, I'm going to think through this. It was a feeling of dread, lack of control.
That's not a feeling.
Vulnerability.
That's still not a feeling. When you think dread, where did you feel that in your body? Because all feelings have resonance in your body. Somewhere it's here.
Yeah, kind of in my stomach.
So then what you do is you keep your eyes closed and you go down into your stomach and you feel what dread feels like.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
No. So what is the dread saying? Because this is how you back up and find out what the mind talk was, basically.
It says I'm at fault. And I'm weak, or something like I'm not
weak. I'm weak.
Not effective. I'm not mature, or that if I had only had if I had been more perfect, I could have caught this earlier.
I should have caught this earlier.
I should have. The should haves, which I think you mentioned in your book, right? The infamous should haves.
Yeah, it's the accusations about who I am and accusations about my employer for not holding out enough. They'll be in there. So when you think about it's my fault, I'm weak and all that, when you think about how often you've heard that inside your head, how often would that be?
Oh, a lot. A lot. Yeah. It's interesting, and and maybe this is because of who I'm almost afraid to blame the employer. In my head, it's never the other, it's my responsibility. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Well, some people are naturally blaming types, so it's always their fault, but it's still a blaming. You're still blaming you.
Yeah, you're right. It's
so
inward.
Huh?
It's inward directed. It's
yeah.
like, yeah.
So when you think about that, how long have you been blaming you for how come things turned out the way they have?
58 years.
So then what I would do is go back as a therapist, I'd go back to that dread feeling and trace it back to when you first started feeling dread about how I'm ineffective and weak and it's my fault.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the situation, but I'd say probably around 8.
Okay. Got a guess as to when that might have started? It'd either be in school or at home.
I think it was at home. I think it was at home. Yeah.
Okay, so then you'd follow that to the life shock. What time of day? Where are
Morning.
you?
I would say it's morning.
Okay,
Um,
where?
Gosh, you think I'm going to pull this all out? I don't know. I think I was downstairs. I don't know. I think I was with my mother.
Okay. And what did she say? What stimulated the it's my fault?
I don't know if I blocked it, or all I just know is that I couldn't ever hit the expectation. I could never hit the expectation.
And so that's a piece of mind talk inside your head. I can never hit the expectations. So it's always my fault.
Right.
So the question is, do you want to live with that?
No.
Because is it even true that you're weak?
No.
Is it true that you're not competent?
No.
Is it true that this is your fault?
There's a little bit in there, Ann, but there's a little bit that still feels at fault. But no, you're right. It's not my fault. I did nothing. Nobody would have looked at that, what was being withheld. I mean, even my friends that are accountants are like, who looks at that? You just trust, right? You trust.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's when blaming others can start up.
Right.
I shouldn't have trusted that.
No, it's true. I just tend to, I think and that's unhealthy in a way, because I'll quickly to blame myself, and then I'll rationalize with them, oh, it was a mistake and I should be understanding. It's all the, the Catholic training that I went through, oh, they're just human. And it's so easy to forgive them. But when it comes to me, it's a little harder.
Yes. Well, you're not practiced at that. You're practiced at blaming you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you've got 58 years of practice.
Yep.
So all it takes is being awake to stop that practice and replace it with the truth. Because if I'm weak is the lie, what's the truth?
The truth is that I'm actually very effective, and I'm a good manifester, and stuff happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? Stuff happens.
Life shocks out of the blue.
Yeah, exactly. Very funny. Yes, it's right out of the blue. It just, I mean, sometimes you get a boost and sometimes you get a kick, right? But It's not going to stop me, right? Yeah.
Well, either way, whether you get a boost or whether you get a slap down, it's still about waking up to who you are at your core, the real Chris. And that's all life is about. Call life, call it God, call it Allah, call it the universal light. I don't care what you call it. But at some level, there's a part of you that's absolutely determined to live your destiny, to live who you are, to be fully Chris, without reservation, without apology.
Right. And so until I put this negative messaging behind me, or maybe what you said, clarity, right? So I face it. And
yeah, once you face it and you separate out the lies and you tell the truth about it, then you can say, okay, so here's what I'm going to do that's different. And then we have another process that teaches you how to do a sort of it's like a personal strategic plan, if you will. So this is the behavior I'm going to stop, and this is the behavior I'm going to start. And then I put some behavior in place that addresses that. And then I put things in place from the other processes we do in the weekend about, I'm going to look like I have one about looking back every night and I see where did I miss joy in my life, because I'm working on joy. And after joy, I'll work on something else, but I'm always working on whatever the next iteration of who I am is, so that I can be more fully who I am till I die.
Right.
So I every night I look back, okay, so what joyful moments did I miss today? And then when I flag one, then I go back and I let myself go back into that memory and put myself there, just like you did in the basement in the morning with your mom. I go back in that same moment and I let myself feel what I didn't let myself feel then. Because I grew up as the oldest of 8 kids. Everything is serious, Chris, serious. I mean, very serious. School is serious. Taking care of my 7 brothers and sisters is serious. Being a good model for my siblings is serious. Everything is serious. So I thought, actually, not everything. I've kind of had a good time in my life.
And so what you do is you look at examples where you have had a good time, as you note them.
And let myself feel it, because the more I can, it's sort of like there's a hormone called oxytocin. It's also called the love hormone. So, you know how you kind of collapse into a hug sometimes and you just feel instantly better? Yeah. Well, so that's oxytocin. So the more you can generate oxytocin, serotonin, dopamines, all of the feel-good hormones, the more you replace the cortisol, the stress hormones. So the idea is to swamp myself in the good chemicals or healthy chemicals and use up the space that cortisol would normally occupy. So it's a way of hormone medicine.
So it's sort of what, like, it's funny, as you said that, I always have this little trick I've learned about myself. When I hear something that moves me or shifts me, I sigh. I feel my body kind of goes, right? And so when you said that, when you said switching the cortisol with oxytocin, and I was like, oh, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because that cortisol is going to whip the heck out of me.
And it's
Right?
going to demand that it's your fault, everything that goes wrong. And you should be better, and you should be more this and less that. And, you know, it's never stopping demanding. And it thinks it's improving you, but it's actually repeating crap from your past. Can I say crap?
You may. We've heard worse words on this podcast. So that's very interesting how so much, like, it's on, we get that programming, right, in our first years. And then as we go through life, that programming, it's like we spend the next 50 years tweaking it. Not some of it's good programming, right? Like some of it's good, but there's a lot that's not so good.
Yes. Like my mother was very non-judgmental.
Lucky you.
Very lucky. However, my dad was just the opposite. And his favorite phrase is, "We are called to judge." So, so I had, so I can go either direction because I've got that, you know, that stream of consciousness from both. So I want to choose which one. And we have another process for letting go of resentment of people. And that's my next book, but I'm too busy to write it at the moment. Very important, because it's another way of having my bad juju inside my head projected onto other people. And then I can't see them. I can't see the reality of who they are because I just focus on the thing I don't like. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar, but different.
Well, it's so funny. I'll explain this to the listeners. I actually have 2 type A parents. I really do. You know, usually a marriage is about one that's kind of laid back and the other one's intense. But no, I had 2 that are very, very efficient people. Now, I say that because, like you were just saying, I don't harbor the resentment because that's not going to move me ahead, and it's not healthy. I need to see the God in them, and I see that they do what they do. It's my choice now, right? At this age, it's my choice to say, do I want to carry that further? Do I want to be that, or can I put that down? You know, I put that, I call it a tool, but can I put that tool down and I don't have to be so efficient
Yeah. And then it's a matter of setting boundaries
every
you
day?
know, every, and, different people have different rights, if you will, or my boundaries are smaller for some people, but they're bigger for other people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And those boundaries are not just with my family, it's also with myself because, right. I'll
Absolutely.
I have a very supportive husband, and he did not have two type. I would say he was probably the opposite. He had maybe two type B parents, two B's and two A's. But we've actually come to a nice agreement. And I remember when we first got together, I was very clean. I kept the house immaculate, and we'd get in fights over it. And he would say, he said, you have a different level, you have a different threshold of cleanliness. I was like, threshold of cleanliness. I was like, what a nice way to put it. And so I thought, he's right. He could live with stuff on the floor and dust and, whatever. And now I have to say, at this point in my life, I just this morning, I was thinking, dang, I'm glad that he has a more laxed level.
Yes.
Because I'm learning to let myself, okay, so I didn't make the bed this morning. Okay, so that floor needs to be swept. So
life doesn't end because your bed's not made.
And there are people that live their whole lives with not making their bed.
Yeah. My granddaughter's one of them.
Yeah. So as you were working on joy for yourself, what's the exercise you said that you do? Do you go over, do you replay the whole day and then redecide, or?
Yeah, I look over the day and I've let myself, because normally I will have a sort of an oxytocin moment or a dopamine moment. But I ride right over the top of it because life is serious, And so I go back to that moment. It's choosing a behavior that directly confronts I have to be serious or the world will fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and how I got onto that is my business partner and I were doing the first training down in Bogota, and it was for a big multinational company. And so I was all wrapped up in how serious this was, how important it was, and how, we had to be on top of it all. And blah, blah, blah. So he came down to breakfast, and I'm still, deeply embedded in what am I missing here? What should be happening?
Shoulds, deeply embedded in shoulds, right?
Absolutely. And so he came down, he looks at me and he said, so how many delightful surprises would you like today?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was such a curveball for me. It's like, delightful surprise. This is about work. This is about being serious. This is about, they're expecting big things from us.
I love it. It gives me goosebumps.
I didn't get it.
Yeah. What a wonderful guy to work with.
Yes. He started the whole sort of give me a little bit of distance from the serious bit that had been running me my whole life. So,
when I went through some spiritual training, one of the neat things about the program was that they actually have you do a timeline. I would share this with my listeners. You get a piece of paper and you draw a timeline of your age, current age on the right side, and 0 on the left, and mark down what you think were key experiences in your life, right? Maybe I didn't realize it, but maybe that in the basement with my mother was a key moment. But write those moments down. It could be when when you got married. It could be when you changed a job. It could be when you got fired. And what did you learn from them, or what beliefs propelled them, right? And that's when I first started realizing, wait a minute, I can rewrite this program. I'm not a computer that is forced to go through the same responses over and over again.
Like
and that's what I love about this, about your book and the process is it's a careful step by step about, okay, you might have learned this when you were, you might have learned that life was serious, but now you have a choice. Your higher self or your mature self can say, hey, why? Do I have to be serious? Maybe
all
not.
the time about everything.
No. And actually I write about my book, sometimes in that state of play, that middle place, That's where all the creativity flows. That's where you get that idea, the divine inspiration. That's where I would say a greater power speaks to you.
Yes.
You know?
It's like you can't hear that greater power when you're all messed up inside your head about how awful things are, how awful you are, they are, it is, however you're thinking about that. Because there's three ways that the life shocks wake you up. One, to yourself, wake you up to who you actually really are at your core before you messed it up with this thing, making stuff up to try to explain things that you couldn't figure out. And then the same with other people. So waking up to, the reality of others, regardless of how your mind, colors them, whether they're, these people in the honeymoon stage where this person is just fabulous, but they're not catching any of the red flags because they've got this mindset that this one's the one. But then after they're married, they go, well, I hate when he does that.
Exactly. There's a lot of life shocks in a relationship, but yes.
Yes.
I love that you bring this up. And the third one, which I love the third one.
Me too.
So the third one is what you say. I would phrase it this way. I even wrote this down in my notes, folks. Being in the right relationship with a higher power. Is that a good way of saying that?
Exactly. Because, I can rail against how God's done with the world, but what good is that going to do me? I mean, I just get, this crease in my forehead, banging my head against a brick wall, trying to make things be my way. And, my way is not what runs the universe. I'm not sure that I agree with how that should be, but I have noticed that I ran for the head of the universe and I was not elected.
Well, I think I will speak for myself. I'll use an I have always had a challenge with that. Well, that's not fair. And this is how life should be. And it is a big step in development to say, well, maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah, maybe that I don't know about.
Maybe it's beyond me, right? Yeah.
And maybe I'll never know. And I finally had to make that okay. I may never know why this is the way it is. But that doesn't change the fact that this is the way it is. And now what will I do to get in alignment with the reality of the isness of it, God, whatever.
So I love that, because you're clarifying that to step into the reality of what is, you can only do that if you stop protesting and judging and pushing against and fighting, right?
Yep. It doesn't mean don't make a stand, but demanding that other people agree with me I don't have that purview. I make a stand. I have a little mantra I say to myself every night also. I am who I am. You are who you are. My journey is my journey. Your journey is not my journey. And all journeys work in the big scheme of things. So, do I know what's best for you? No. Do I even know what's best for me? No. I sometimes think I do. But there have been times when I've pursued something that I thought would be in my best interest. And you know what? It absolutely was not. And I knew it in my gut.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's a wonderful practice to realize that and to let go, right? That saying, let go, let God, or just sometimes, asking yourself, I think I talked to you about this when we previewed you, because you're talking about the mind and the heart and the gut. And sometimes when I'm up against a situation, I ask all three. I'll sit there and I'll say, okay, mind, what do you think I should do in this situation? Heart, what do you think I should do? Gut, what should I do? And that's all we can do, is have as much clarity, right? Step into reality, like you're saying, that constantly looking to be more real.
Yeah, exactly. I was reading this book called Braining, Multiple Braining, and they talk about the three brains. What they have found out is that the heart has 40,000 to 120,000 thinking neurons, and the gut has 500,000, thinking neurons, and the brain has billions, because the heart doesn't need that many to think. It doesn't need to think about stuff. It knows. It knows who I am. It knows who I'm not. And the gut is like, I get a little one like, I wouldn't do that if I were you.
I love the gut. I mean, that's when I paint or when I'm being creative and it's like that gut will just say blue, 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 right? And
Yes.
and learning to listen to the gut.
Yes.
I want to share that with the listeners. When you say that thinking neurons, I've heard about this, and I have to get that book. I haven't gotten it yet. But
It's worth reading.
Yeah, it's the concept that there's intelligence. See, we think the heart is just a pump, like a tool, like the air conditioner out there. But the theory here is that it's not an air conditioner just pumping. It's actually responding and thinking.
It's feeling. This is thinking, this is feeling, and the gut's knowing.
Oh, I like that.
So it's like all three brains actually have their own memories, and they're actually, every single one have a plasticity. So if something happens in the brain, other parts of the brain can take over and,
do the function.
Yeah, create the functions that were damaged. And same with the heart, same with the gut. And they have story after story and scientific proof after scientific proof about how that's so.
Wow, because
I was amazed.
Yeah,
and
that is amazing.
Every time I would read something, I thought, I don't understand that. But I would know it rang. I would feel the resonance with it. And so it's like, and then I'd read something about the scientific part and I'd think, knew that. I didn't have the science, but I knew that.
And sometimes I agree with you. And sometimes I don't know if you need, the science is nice, right? It's nice, but it's just another aspect of the truth.
And they're discovering more and more and more about all the body. I mean, it was a bit of a difficult read because if I was a doctor, I think this would be easier to read because it's about the autonomic nervous system, a lot of it. But I would read a piece and then go further, and then it would make sense. You know how you can,
right?
Yeah. And then they had stories for it, so I could see how it all worked.
When I was going through training, we had some difficult books, and our teacher said, "Look, you're not going to always get what they're saying, but if you read it, and it's weird, it is sinking in. It's sinking in." And we're so like mind driven, right? Well, I need to understand the structure of that sentence, right? But sometimes it's almost like it comes in the heart, right?
Yes,
or the gut. Yeah, I love those concepts of all three, and so I want to talk a little bit more because we're getting close on time, but I wanted to ask you, we talk about the term mind talk. And so I just want to share that with the listeners so they understand and start. So when I wrote the book, I started painting, and I would realize one of my big lessons was I started listening to my thoughts when I paint.
Yes.
And I was like, what am I thinking? And I was thinking stuff like this stinks. And I kid you not, like my mother said, you can't make money as an artist, and all these things. Right. So tell me, what is mind talk to you? What?
Well, first of all, mind talk is actually, it's either false or it's true, or it's don't know, because it also makes up things about the future. I'll never have another partner as good as this one. I've screwed up here, that kind of thing. So any projection into the future is always a don't know. I don't care how psychic you are, you're not 100%. And so it's watching for those future things, but it's also watching for those things that are like, you're incompetent, you're weak, you're these things. And it takes your whole totality of who you are and puts it into a crappy little sentence that is never true, ever. I mean, even babies aren't powerless. They pretty much let you know.
Yeah, they sure do.
What they like, what they don't. Try to feed my granddaughter carrots, forget it.
So when you think mind talk, you're thinking what's going on in your what dialogue?
Yeah. And some things are true. I matter. I belong. I'm important. My voice matters. Who I am matters. And I had a mind talk from way back as a kid, because I went to 10 schools in 12 years. So I always had it that I don't belong, no matter where I am, I don't belong. And, It took me being in the middle of the Kalahari, listening to hippos do their thing here, elephants over here, lions over there, and a leopard passing by doing their little kind of a thing. So, and I'm in the middle, of absolute nowhere. And I'm awake because I've got heat rash everywhere. And I'm wake up scratching. There's like 40 million mosquitoes inside my mosquito net. 2 guys are snoring. And I'm thinking, I felt so peaceful. I thought I belong. And that's when it actually really turned for me, with the hippos and the elephants and the lions and the thing and the thing and the thing. And here I am, I belong right here, right now. Because you know what? I am right here, right now. And I shouldn't be anyplace else. Here's the physical proof.
So I would think most people would think I don't belong when they're getting bit by mosquitoes. So was it some sort of voice from within, voice from your heart, from your gut? What?
No, it was sort of like I kind of melted into the environment. I really don't know how to explain it because I've never had an experience like that, where I became at one with everything. The mosquitoes, the snoring, the whoa, whoa, the lions roaring. I could hear the elephant stripping bark off a tree. It's like, this is a noisy place in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And here I am scratching. Okay, I belong right here, right now.
Oh, I love it. I think of that. For me, it's when I'm very present.
Yes.
And on all levels, right? Present
Yes.
to everything around me.
Yes. When you're painting and you're in the slot, it's the same thing.
It is. It's what I would call a conversation with God or spirit. You are connected.
Yes.
And I also I've used the term called moments of awe. It's
yes.
That moment of awe.
Yes. And I didn't have one cell in my body that was scared. I belong right here, right now. Being exactly in this situation, not one thing different. It was awesome. And that switched for me a thing that I had in place for as long as I could remember about not belonging. I really had it. I was an alien. I was dropped off on the wrong planet by mistake. Nobody's discovered that mistake, but sooner or later, they're going to call me back and I'm going to go where I'm supposed to be.
Hey, you know what, Ann? I'm going to tell you a story. So when I was a kid, I swear to God, I would go outside and look at the stars and the moon. Yes. And I thought that story. I was like, why did you put me here?
Exactly.
I was like, this is not my planet.
I don't understand these people.
I don't.
Stuff. I don't know. I don't fit.
I do not fit. And so I love that you say that. And it's wonderful to know that, yes, I do fit and you fit. And that is a truth. That is a spiritual truth.
And you know what? It still comes up every now and then, but it doesn't have the same claim on me as it used to. And it doesn't come often anymore. But there, not too long ago, I was deep into, I don't belong here. I need to get out. I need to go wherever it is I fit. I don't know where it is. So I let myself wallow in that for 2 days. Now I know better. I just wasn't done with it.
Right. And I think, like you said, I think you say this in your book, that with practice, you walk through that Mindtalk experience faster. It's hard to totally erase it. I still jump back into what did I do wrong with the taxes, or it's my fault. But I did move, Ann, I will say I moved through it pretty quick. And I realized, you know what, if debt can happen so fast, so can abundance. That's what I said to myself. Well, then this money is erased as fast as it came.
That's right.
But you're right. There was a time when it would take 3 weeks to get through there.
Yeah.
And now I got it down to about 2 days. It was a day and a half.
Yeah. Well, see, that's called progress. We're a work in progress.
Always. Yeah.
So the other thing that I think is that we were given free will. So we get to choose whether we're going to go with reality or if we're going to go with the nonsense in our head, because this is also creative. It's just also has a redundancy that goes back to previous times, that it's like our life gets taken over by the body snatchers. It's like, that's not me anymore.
No, you're right. Oh, I love it. I love it. We are always creating, and that's another thing. You can create good or bad. You can tell yourself weird stories or the truth, or look for the truth. And I love that. I'm going to go back to what you said earlier when you said, you ask yourself, is this true? What were the three responses? It's
Okay.
true. It's
It's either
false.
true, reality wise, it's really true, or it's really false. And I know better and I can prove it. And the third thing is, I don't know. Because that's really where faith comes in.
That's a wonderful check, right? That's a wonderful check. You know, like for example, when I sit there and I was painting, you can never make a living out of from painting. That thought comes in. I could sit there and go, I don't know that. I
Yeah.
don't know that.
Well, you do know that because you have made a living at it.
Yeah, actually.
So it is true that you can make a living at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
is
I
there,
can't make a living at it is absolutely false. You have proof otherwise.
this has been a great conversation. I'm glad that that I had you on the show. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel important that you want to share with the listeners about the process?
I think learning to tell the truth about who we are and claim our bigness, our realness, not our bigness over other people, but the bigness of who we are really, and our ability to be in right relationship with other people, the real person, not the one we make up in our head, but also it's sort of like faith, hope, and love. If you think of those three, self, others, context. So self would be love. I mean,
Okay.
faith. No, the life is faith. The context is faith. Hope is here. Love is there. And faith is that.
Faith, hope, and love.
Faith, hope, love.
I love it. I love it.
And that's
You
what
know,
Lifeshocks are all about.
it's a new term for me, and I like it. So also, you want to share with the listeners that you have this book available on your website. They can actually download it or listen to it.
Yeah, it's a audio file on my website. You can order it from Amazon if you want a paper copy. It's free on my website. So I had people say, I hear you in my head all the time, but now I want it on a audio file. So I said, okay. So I have a friend. Do you know Tom Parrish?
I do
He
know
does
Tom.
podcasts.
Yeah. Huh?
Okay. He's the one that
Did it for you?
I
And
read it.
also, now how about these trips you do? Do they have to go through these trips? If someone was interested in that, how would they find out more about that?
Well, we're having one in Houston in July, July 15, 16. It's called Launchpad, but it's one of the premier, how do you get into the whole program? Or you can come over to Madrid and do it with me June 9 through 11. And then I'm doing one for students only called Lighting the Fire Within in London.
Now, are these listed on your website? If they go there, can they see these, or do you have
No,
links
but you
there?
can find out on moretolife.org.
Okay, moretolife.org. Great, great. Because there might be, you never know. And Houston's awful close.
Yes.
So, well, thanks again.
I'll be trained.
Thanks for being on the show. I want to remind the listeners to follow this podcast, share it with your friends. It's always great to be more conscious, be more self-aware, and really be aware of your own reality, the real thing, the real reality. So thank you for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.